Hello guys, welcome to my channel. None of the events mentioned are true and it didn't relate to the real story. It's just a fiction story. Don't have any idol that is being harmed and no negative roles. Comment down your favorite FF and I will vote for you. Thank you so much. Now we will start the video. Her tears came quietly, slipping down her cheeks without sobs, as though even in her whole sorrow she freaked, making too much noise. She pressed her palms together in her lap, wondering why she had to bear the punishment for mistakes she had never made. The night deepened, and still he sat there in the dim glow of beside the lamp, her heart aching with the knowledge that the man she was bound to didn't see her at all. Not the real her, not the woman who tried day after day to make this marriage something more than any arrangement born of scandal. And somewhere down the hall, Jungkook lay awake longer than he cared to admit. The memory of her trembling voice gnawing at him in ways he didn't understand. It began quietly, almost unnoticeably, with Minnie moving more slowly than usual. One chilly morning, she had been up so early as always, helping the staff arrange the breakfast table, but her face was pale and her steps lacked her usual lightness. When Jungkook came downstairs, she was already serving tea to his mother, but her trembled slightly as she poured. Careful, Mrs. Jones said, disapproval in her tone, sharper than concern. You are making a mess. Minnie murmured an apology, setting the teapot down and excusing herself. Jungkook barely looked up from his phone, catching on the faint slump of her shoulders as she disappeared in the kitchen. The day passed without incident, but by evening, when Jungkook returned from the office, he noticed something unusual. The lights in their bedroom were dim, and Minnie was lying on the bed, girdling beneath the thick quilt, her face turned toward the wall. It was rare to find her resting at this hour. She was usually in the living room with a book or quietly organizing something around the house. He stood in the doorway for a moment, debating whether to say something. Are you asleep? He asked finally. There was a pause, and her voice came soft and weak. No. He stepped inside, his brows knitting slightly. What's wrong with you? I'm fine, she murmured, though her voice was hoarse. Just a little tired. Up close, he could see the flush of fever in her cheeks, the glassy sheen in her eyes. He groaned despite himself. You don't look fine. She gave a faint smile that he didn't quite reach her eyes. It's nothing. I will be better tomorrow, she said. Jungkook exhaled slowly, an unfamiliar tug of something. Worry, maybe, pulling at him. Did you eat? She hesitated. No. Without thinking, he left the room and returned a few minutes later with a bowl of soup from the kitchen. Sit up, he said, his tone still clipped but lacking its usual edge. She obeyed, moving slowly. He handed her the bowl and she wrapped her hands around it, the steam fogging her lashes. Thank you, she said quietly. He sat at the edge of the bed, watching her take small sips. She was never been pale. Now her braid a little loose, strands of hair forming a face. There was no calculation in her expression, no hint of the cunning he had convinced himself she possessed. She looked fragile, human, and in that moment something shifted inside him so quickly and unexpectedly that he almost missed it. She wasn't Hania. She wasn't anything like her. She was gentle, unassuming, and far too living to endure without complaint. When she sat at the empty bowl inside, and she met his gaze for just a second, and there was nothing in her eyes. Gratitude, maybe, or relief that made his chest feel tight. You should rest, he said, standing quietly, as though distance could undo whether had just passed between them. She nodded, sinking back against the pillows. Good night. He paused at the doorway, his hand resting on the frame. For a fleeting second, he considered saying something more, something softer. But then his mother's word from days ago and the gossip he would heard rose unbidden in his mind. She's no different from Hania. The warmth in his chest cooled. He reminded himself of the betrayal he had suffered, the humiliation of the wedding day. With the kindness he had just shown was a momentary lapse, nothing more. Good night, he said at last, his voice returning to its usual guarded tone. When he left, Minnie lay in the quiet dark, her fever making the edges of the world blurred, but a small, stubborn part of her held on a rare moment of care. It wasn't much. It wasn't enough to change the way things were, but it was something. The night air in the city carried a faint hum of traffic and a distant glow of neon signs bleeding in the dark. Inside the junk group's private banquet hall, chandeliers glimmered like constellations, bathing the room in a soft golden light. Round tables, desks in crisp white linen, were set with sparkly cutlery and delicate glassware. Waiters moved like shadows, waving between guests, refilling wine glasses and serving delicate hors d'oeuvres. Minnie stood near the entrance, her slender hands collapsed in front of her, feeling oddly out of place in the deep blue gown Jungkook's mother had deliberately chosen for her. It wasn't expensive compared to the dresses of the other women in the room. Her mother-in-law had made sure of that, but it was modest and flattering, with a simple neckline and a small shimmer under the lights. She hadn't wanted to come tonight. She knew how Jungkook felt about presence at his business event. Unnecessary, almost embarrassing, but this dinner was different. It wasn't just about celebrating a deal. It was a chance of Jungkook to impress an important foreign investor who could open door for his company. She kept her eyes on him from across the room. He looked impossibly sharp in his black suit, the white of his shirt crisp against the skin, his dark hair brushed neatly back. He wasn't smiling. Jungkook rarely did in her presence, but his expression was polite, controlled. He was surrounded by a small group of men, all speaking animatedly, and she could tell he was working hard to keep the conversation flowing. The truth was, Minnie wanted him to succeed, no matter how cold he was to her, no matter how much his words sometimes cut. She couldn't bring herself to wish him harm, but she had a strange sense tonight, an almost instinctive unease that something might be wrong. She was proven right sooner than she expected. The foreign investor, a tall man named Mr. Lee, with salt and pepper hair and an air of casual authority, was the evening guest of honor. Many noticed that Jungkook had been keeping him engaged, nodding at his comments, offering polite laughter. But then one of the other executives I dabbled within the company, if Minnie remembered Jungkook's earlier conversation correctly, leaned in to clarify a detail about the product timeline. His words carried a subtle but dangerous twist, suggesting that Jungkook had failed to prepare an important part of the proposal. Minnie saw it instantly, the slight furrow in Mr. Lee's brow, the faint tightening of his mouth. The air between them shifted, the easy tone fading into one of suspicion. Jungkook opened his mouth to respond, but the rival voice was smooth and cutting, layering in half-truth designed to make Jungkook look unprepared. It was kind of a moment where a single misstep should shatter to trust. Minnie's heart began to pound. She knew that look in Jungkook's eyes, controlled, but flickering the edge of panic he would never admit to. He was seconds away from losing this man's confidence, and the rival knew it before she could stop herself. She stepped forward. "Excuse me, Mr. Lee." she said softly, approaching the small, respectful bow. Her voice was steady, though her hands trembled slightly. I couldn't help overhearing if I am may clarify. She glanced briefly at Jungkook, who looked at her in surprise, borderline alarm, but didn't stop her. She explained in calm, clear English, drawing on the fragment of business knowledge she had picked up from overhearing his late night calls. She outlined the exact steps the Jungkook team had taken, even referencing a document that had been that had been sent ahead but might have been overlooked. She spoke with the kind of respectful precision that left no room for doubt, subtly steering the conversation back to the truth without openly contradicting anyone. When she finished, Mr. Lee's expression had changed entirely. His brows smoothed, and the faintest smile tugged at the corner of his lips. "Ah, I see," he said warmly, nodding at Jungkook. "It's clear you have prepared well. My apologies for the misunderstanding." Jungkook inclined his head in polite bow, but his eyes, when they met Minnie's, held something unfamiliar. No gratitude exactly, but something close. The rest of the dinner went smoothly after that. Mr. Lee seemed more engaged than before, and by the end of the evening, he shook Jungkook's hand firmly, promising to discuss final terms in the coming weeks. The rival executive looked far less pleased, his thin smile betraying his irritation. When the last of the guests had left and the waiter began clearing the tables, Minnie quietly gathered her small clutch and prepared to leave. She didn't expect Jungkook to say something. He rarely did after public events, but as they walked toward the exit, his voice broke the silence. "You knew what you were talking about," he said abruptly. His tone was still cool, but there was no edge of mockery in it. She blinked, glancing at him. I don't want you to misunderstood." He stood walking for a moment, turning to look at her. "Why?" The question was sharp, almost suspicious. "Why bother? It's not like you get something out of this." Her throat tightened. There were so many answers she could give, because she didn't want him to fail, because she still saw the man beneath the coldness, because she could still stop herself from caring, but she simply said, "Because it was right thing to do." For a moment, his gaze lingered on her, searching for something. Then he looked away, resuming his strides towards the waiting car. The ride home was quiet, but not the suffocating silence she was used to. It felt different. He didn't retreat to his phone or turn his body away from her. Once or twice she caught him glancing at her, as if he was trying to fit the vision of her into the image he would build in his mind. The image of a woman like Hanya, manipulative and self serving, and for the first time, maybe he realized the picture didn't match. Back at the house, she excused herself to change out of the gown. Alone in her room, Minnie allowed herself a small sigh of relief. It wasn't much, but tonight she had done something. She had proven it for a moment that she was not the person he thought she was. Whether he believed it or not, that was out of her hands. Across the hall, Jungkook sat in the study, staring at the untouched glass of whiskey on his desk. He couldn't stop replaying the moment she had stepped. In the calm in her voice, the quiet certainty in her eyes, she hadn't hesitated, hadn't tried to make herself the center of attention. She would simply helped. It unsettled him more than he wanted to admit. He told himself he didn't mean anything. That one deed didn't erase what her sister had done. But deep down, a thought he couldn't quite shake had begun to form. Maybe he would been wrong about her. And that thought, small as it was the first crack in the wall he had so carefully built. The early morning light spilled gently into the room, painting soft gold across the edge of curtains. Minnie stayed quietly, Her eyes opened to the faint warmth of sunlight. She had woken before the alarm, something she had been doing more often lately, not because she had anywhere urgent to be, but because silence was easier to find in these hours. Before the house began to fill with footsteps, voices, and unspoken expectations, Jungkook's side of the bed was empty as usual. He preferred rising earlier to go for a run or head the study. Sometimes she heard the faint hum of his voice, phone calls, sharp and authoritative when speaking to his colleagues, a tone so different from the clipped words he reserved for her. She sat up slowly, her fingers brushing the thin blanket she had pulled over herself in the night. Her gaze drifted toward the clock. 6:30. She knew his schedule well by now. By 7, he would be at the dining table, coffee in hand, reading over something on his tablet. He liked his strong coffee, but only in the morning. In the afternoon, he preferred tea. And not just any tea. He liked a blend of green and chamomile, light sweetened, steeped exactly 3 minutes. She had learned that not from asking, but from observing, from piecing together like fragments of knowledge about a man who never invited her in. She got up quietly and padded towards the kitchen. The floor was cold under her bare feet. She didn't mind. She moved with practiced familiarity, pouring out a tin of tea leaves, the small honey jar, the white Brooklyn tea he seemed to favor. She set the kettle on, listening to the low rush of water heating. It was such a small act, making tea for him, and yet it felt strangely significant. Minnie didn't know why she still did these things. Jungkook never asked for them, and he never thanked her either. But on rare occasion, she thought she caught the tiniest flicker in his eyes when he noticed a glance that lingered a second too long, as if something inside him hesitated before moving on. When he entered the kitchen, she was just setting the cup on the counter near his usual seat. He stood mid-set, eyes flickering briefly to the tea before shifting to her pace. She offered a polite nod, avoiding the urge to say good morning. He wasn't fond of unnecessary pleasantries. Chamomile? He asked, his voice quiet but edged with curiosity. Yes, she replied softly, her hand trembling with her. It's how you like it. There was no smile, no real warmth in his expression, but neither was different usual indifference. He took the cup, glancing down it for a moment before sitting it beside his table. That was all he said, but to Minnie it was more acknowledgement than she had received in days. Later that week, the weather turned unreasonably cold. The wind rattled faintly against the windows as Minnie walked to the hallway, her arms wrapped loosely around herself. She had been organizing some of the smaller storage cabinets in the living room when she noticed her bracelet, one she had owned since before the marriage, had snapped. The thin silver chain dangled helplessly in her palm, the small charm hanging by a single bent link. She didn't know why it upset her so much. It wasn't expensive, but it carried memories of her late father, who she had brought it for her on a trip. She sat down at the edge of the couch, trying to fix it with her fingers, but the tiny metal pieces were too delicate. She didn't notice Jungkook enter until his shadow fell across her lap. She looked up, startled, half accepting him to walk past without a word. But his eyes had narrowed slightly, not in annoyance, but in focus, as he settled on the broken bracelet in her hands. What happened? He asked. It broke, she murmured, holding it out. I was trying to fix it, but I think the link is bent. Without a word, Jungkook extended his hand. She hesitated, then placed the bracelet in his palm. He studied it briefly before leaving the room. Minnie assumed that was the end of it. He had lost interest and moved on, as usual. But 15 minutes later, he returned. In his hand, the bracelet glinted faintly under the light. The link mended almost perfectly. He placed it gently on the coffee table in front of her. It's fixed, he said simply. She started at it, then at him, her lips parting in surprise. You fixed it? It wasn't that hard, just needed the right tool. His voice was usual, almost dismissive, but his eyes didn't match. There was something unreal there, something that made her heart beat slow in her chest. Thank you, she whispered, her fingers brushing the cool silver as she picked it up. He only nodded and left the room, but she noticed his steps were slower than usual, as if he had more he wanted to say and decided against it. Over the next days, these small, almost imperceptible moments began to accumulate. Minnie started leaving his favorite snacks in the study when she knew he would be working late. He began pulling her hair chair out for her at dinner without thinking. She noticed he no longer completely ignored her when she spoke. Even his response were brief. One evening they found themselves alone in the living room. The television played softly in the background, though neither of them seemed particularly interested in it. Minnie sat curled up at one end of the couch, reading, while Jungkook typed something on his laptop. The atmosphere was calm, but not warm. Exactly. No longer tense. At one point, she stood to get a glass of water, and as she passed by him, the hem of her cardigan caught on the edge of the coffee table. She stumbled slightly, but before she could regain her balance, his hand shot out, steadying her by the arm. Careful, he said, his voice low. For a brief moment, their eyes met. It wasn't like the accidental glances they would share before. It lingered, silently and almost questioning. Then, as if realizing what had just happened, he withdrew his hand and returned to his work. Minnie went to the kitchen, her pulse unexpectedly faster, her mind caught on the feeling of his touch. That night, as she lay in bed, she thought about these tiny exchanges, the tea, the bracelet, the fleeting hand on her arm. They weren't declarations of care. They were apologies for the coldness he had shown in her in the past, but they were cracked, faint, and fragile in the walls we had built between them, and while neither of them spoke of it, those unspoken moments began to carry more weight than either was ready to admit. The evening air was heavy with the scent of expensive perfume and clinking glasses. The grand bedroom of the Hyatt was lit in warm golden tones, chandeliers spilling light over glittering gowns and tailored suits. It was one of those elite charity galas where smiles were polished, conversation were rehearsed, and everyone was careful to be seen with the right people. Minnie stood beside Jungkook, her posture straight, but her hands clasped tightly in front of her, hiding the slight tremor into her fingers. She had been here before, in similar events with her family, back when her life felt simpler. But now everything was different. The whisper, the sidelong glances, the way people's eyes shifted when they realized who she was. It was impossible not to feel the weight of judgment. Her pale lavender gown shimmered under the lights, a soft contrast to the hard tears she felt burning into her back. It wasn't that she wanted to be there. Jungkook's parents had insisted they attend together, and as Minnie followed quietly. Jungkook stood next to her, tall, perfectly groomed in a black suit that fit him like it was skin of his skin. His expression natural, almost cold. He had barely spoken to her all the evening, except for a curt, "Stay close." It should have been easy to fade into the background, but Minnie had long since learned that in this world, silence did not protect you from cruelty. They were speaking with a group of Jungkook business acquaintances when she felt it, the shift in the air, the tone of someone's voice dripping into poison. I must say, Jungkook, a tall woman in 50 emerged dress said, her lips curling into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Your choice in companionship is interesting. We all thought you had better taste. The man in the group chuckled under his breath. Minnie felt her cheeks warm, unsure if she had misheard, but the woman wasn't done. Then again she continued, swirling her champagne glass lazily. I suppose she's a fitting replacement. After all, her sister did teach her a thing or two about how to marry into wealth. So talent seems to run the family. The laughter that followed wasn't loud, but it was enough. Minnie's stomach dropped. She knew exactly what this was about. Hania's betrayal. It didn't matter how many months had passed since the scandal. It followed her everywhere, an ugly shadow she could never outturn. Her lips parted, a soft breath scraping, but no words came. She had been insulted before, by strangers, by acquaintances, even by some members of Jungkook family, but never so directly, never in front of him. She stared at the floor, willing herself not to cry. If she cried here in the glittering room full of gossip, hungry vultures, they would eat her alive. She braced herself for Jungkook's silence, for him to let it pass, to pretend it hadn't been said. That what he usually did, keep his distance emotionally and verbally. But then something shifted. The air around him seemed to sharpen. Her voice cut through murmurs like glass break. Enough! The laughter stopped instantly. Minnie's head stepped up, eyes wide. Jungkook was no longer standing still. His shoulders were scared. His gaze locked on the woman in emerald with a heat that could scorch. I will give you one chance to make that back, he said, his tone low but deadly. Come on, because what you just said was not only untrue, it was disgusting. The woman's smirk flattened. Jungkook, you were only insulting my wife? He interrupted, stepping forward slightly, his tall frame casting a shadow over her. In public, to my face, and you thought I would let this slide? His voice is just enough to draw the attention of the nearby tables. If you have an issue with Minnie, you bring it to me privately. But you do not ever speak about her or her family. The wait again. Is it that clear? Hope you all like the video. Please like, subscribe, and share. And you people didn't comment under on my videos if you like the video. So please comment and tell me that you like the video. So I will make more than that. And about the video that I have just posted about a week ago, I said that I will post it after I get 2000 views on it. And keep following me. Please follow my channel. I want to reach 2000 subscribers. I am recently on 1090. I will be very thankful to you. Please keep going and keep encouraging me. Thank you so much for watching the video. Bye bye.